Now let's talk about the 7 secrets of the healing codes. I'm so excited about this, I can't hardly stand it. Why? Because this is where it all came from. These are the bedrock, underlying principles of the healing codes, why they work, how they work, where it came from, how the problems develop in the first place, and how they can heal, and how your life can change as a result of all of that. Now, an interesting thing, I've been teaching this for 16 years, okay? The interesting thing is that the research that validates all this stuff has only been coming out in the last number of years, and in some cases, maybe 10 years ago at the most. So we were teaching this stuff before anybody else. We were teaching it before the research, but now the research has been coming out for years now, and it's coming out now faster almost than we can keep up with. So we are so excited to share it with you with the research so that you can believe that this is not just me talking, but this is the best medical schools and brightest minds in the world, and you can really grab hold of this and know why you're doing this and how doing it can change everything in your life. Now, let me share where this came from, okay? And please hear me on this. And I alluded to this morning. Ben and I are here to share the truth with you in love. The Bible says 365 times, fear not. And it indicates that everything bad comes from fear. Okay? That's where I got it. There's a scripture in the Bible in Proverbs that says, guard your heart above everything else, because from it flow the issues of life. And I'm told by scholars, which I'm not one, that if you look in the original Hebrew language and ask the question, what percentage of the issues of life? The answer is 100%. In other words, so you can't have an issue in your life that's not a heart issue. Now, for secret number 1, I'm going to bring up my partner, Dr. Ben Johnson, and he is going to share with you on the first couple of secrets, starting with number 1, stress, which is one of the major keys to everything in life. So welcome to the 7 secrets of the healing codes, and buckle your seatbelt.
I want to talk to you about secret number 1, and that is stress. And you're going, oh, that's no secret. We've known about stress for a long time, and indeed we have known about stress, but I'm going to tell you about stress in a different way, in a way that you haven't thought about it before. Stress, you know, even the CDC in Atlanta, our premier government health agency, says that stress is the number 1 cause of disease. They say that 80% of all disease is a result of stress. That's right. The Center for Disease Control in Atlanta says that. So, but you know, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Stanford University Medical Center says, no, they're wrong. It's 95+%. In fact, if it's not genetic, stress caused it. So stress is huge in the cause of disease. It is the cause of disease, or at least by anyone's measure, the largest single cause of disease. But what is stress? And we should ask, is stress the telephone ringing when you don't want it to ring? Is stress getting the credit card bill in the mail? Is stress your kids not doing what you want them to do? Is stress losing a job or a new job with a boss that you're not enjoying? Well, certainly all of those things are stressing, but that's literally not what we're talking about here today. We're going to discuss a paradigm of stress that you may have never thought of. So those are some everyday issues of stress in our life, and yes, those are stressful, but that's not what causes physiological stress that leads to disease. Let's just talk about physiological stress for a minute, and let me help you understand what physiological stress is. in our bodies, we have different parts of things that are carrying on different activities. Right now, I am thinking and trying to communicate with you, and I'm in control of that part of my body. But you know what? There's breakfast down here somewhere, and I'm not in control of that food moving along, and I'm not in control of digesting the fats that were in that food or the proteins. I'm not in charge of, I am, but I'm not thinking about adding more insulin to take care of a rising blood sugar. I'm not thinking about clearing hepatic toxins from the liver. So all of that stuff is under a part of the nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic because it's automatic. We aren't thinking about it. And within that system, now that system, the autonomic nervous system, controls 99.99% of everything that's going on in your body this very second. My feet are telling me that I'm standing on a level surface. My ears, my inner ears and my inside of my head are telling me, yes, I'm level, and so are my surroundings. My skin receptors are telling me what temperature it is and whether I need to be warmer or colder. Food, kidneys clearing sodium, adrenals adding more. All of that information is coming into the brain, and it's being processed, and responses are being given to all of that information. And that there are trillions of bits of information every second coming into the brain. And we are only in control of maybe 10,000 bits of that information. So that process is huge going on in the autonomic nervous system. Now, there's two parts of the autonomic nervous system. There's the parasympathetic, which is involved more with the growth and healing, maintenance, health mode. It's kind of should be predominant most of the time, and that's all the processes that I was just talking about: clearing toxins, health, healing, growth, cells dividing and growing, maintenance, health and well-being. Now, there's another little part of the autonomic nervous system that's called the sympathetic. It's not made to be predominant except in one situation, and that is fight or flight, we call it. The fire alarm mode. When we are in an emergency situation and we've got to literally save our life, that's when that part of the autonomic nervous system kicks in. And that's a wonderful thing to have because we want to live, right? So if that 18-wheeler pulls over in your lane, you've got to respond rapidly, move, brake, whatever it takes. If I was recently hiking out in the Colorado Rockies, if a mountain lion had showed up, I would have needed to run faster, climb higher, and do whatever it took to evade being eaten alive by that mountain lion. And I saw one, and he was magnificent up there. And I'm glad he stayed up there, and I was down here. But that fire alarm mode, the fight or flight, the sympathetic system is made to save our lives in those emergency situations. Well, a huge number of things change when sympathetic takes over. Your adrenals kick out adrenaline to give you that strength and that surge. The blood, it kind of leaves the frontal area of your brains, the creative parts, the emotional parts, because you know what? You don't need to be artistic and creative for the next few minutes. You need to survive. The food in your bowel, the digestive process dies way down. Dies not a good word there. Settles way down and slows down because it doesn't matter if there's food in your bowel that's not been processed 10 minutes from now if you're not alive. And those toxins that your liver was clearing and the extra sodium that your kidneys were clearing because you put a little extra salt on the food, it doesn't matter if those are still in your body 10 minutes from now if you're not alive. So this process is made to save your life. But there's another huge important thing, and for some of you the light is going to come on when you hear this, and that is the immune system. It takes a direct shutdown order right from the brain. Those other items that I was speaking of are actually mediated through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And that literally goes through the blood and causes the release of adrenaline, and then that flows through the blood and finally gets out there to all of these receptors on the cells and causes its activity. But there is one thing that is immediately shut down when you go into fight or flight, and that is the immune system. The brain sends a direct message out right through the nerves, and right at the end of each nerve ending, there's a cell called the dendrite cell. And it sends out messages to the immune system, shut down, stop. Well, why on earth would it do that? The immune system is really important. Well, yeah, it's really important. And yes, it's about saving your life and healing and repair. But think about it. Let's say there's some bacteria over here where I got a bug bite over the weekend. Well, those bacteria can wait 10 minutes, right? Well, sure. I've got a virus over here, and the immune system needs to be responding to that virus, correct? Well, yes, but it doesn't matter for the next 10 minutes if the immune system is not responding to that virus, because the immune system is such a high energy user. Remember, we're going to try to shift all of our energy utilization over to what can save our life in the next 5 minutes. So that's muscles, tendons, the lower part of the brain stem, the heart, the lungs. That's where all of our resources have to be focused in the next few minutes, because remember, if we don't survive the next 5 minutes, none of the rest of that matters. So we're going to shift all of our energy resources over to the sympathetic nervous system and what it controls. And sure enough, our life gets saved and we survive. Now, that's okay if that happens once a month or maybe even once a week. That's pretty stressful, but if it's happening every day, and what if it's happening every hour, or what if it's happening every few minutes? Now think back. Stress is what? It's the cause of disease. And you go, well, Dr. Johnson, there's 1,000 diagnoses. I've been to a doctor 50 times and I've never received the same diagnosis. You're telling me that stress is the cause of all disease? There's only one cause of disease? Well, yes. The diagnosis or whatever symptom we show up with is simply the weak link. That's where the chain breaks. The cause is stress. And we break in different places because we all have a different weak link. And then there's a manifestation, what we label a disease. But the cause is one thing, stress. Well, now think about that for a second. If there's really only one cause of disease, then we can have one treatment. We might not need 1,000 different drugs or 1,000 different things to treat the 1,000 different diseases with, because there's only one thing that really causes disease. If we can find that one thing and remove physiological stress from the body, think of the incredible healing that's going to go on. And think of the incredible emotional relief of all the success, of all the relationship problems, of all the disease that's going to heal as a result of removing that one thing, the cause of disease. So you've got to wrap around, you've got to get this, because this is huge. I'm not just talking about stress, I'm talking about physiological stress. And then we're going to share you what physiological stress really is. So in the physiological sense, inside of the body, it's the imbalance of sympathetic and parasympathetic, where they should be. And it's the overbalance of the sympathetic in relationship to that. Dr. Doris Rapp explained it a number of years ago as the stress barrel. And that is, we have a barrel or a tank in us, and this is to help you conceptualize that we can deal with stress as long as our barrel isn't full. But if we get too much stress, once that barrel overflows, then we can't deal with it anymore. We start breaking links in our chain. And so the stress barrel. So you ask the question, well, I don't seem to be stressed, or I feel okay. Well, you know what? We have used a test that measures stress in the body called heart rate variability. You may hear us refer to it as HRV testing. That's heart rate variability, which is a wonderful scientific test for measuring physiological stress in the body. And we would test people, and we would ask them before we tested them, how are you today? How's it going? Do you feel stressed out? And 50% of those people that said, oh, no, I'm okay, I'm not stressed, would be physiological in stress. And that's why, because their tank, they had a lot of stress in their stress barrel, but it hadn't overflowed yet, and so it wasn't breaking anything right now. So they were able to handle the stress, even though they were under a huge amount of stress. The barrel hadn't overflowed yet and started breaking things. So when that barrel overflows, that's when we can no longer deal with stress. Now, our barrel may have been mostly full of stress before, so we were experiencing a huge amount of stress. And you know, when we did studies, we can do a study called a heart rate variability study that measures physiological stress in the body. And we've done these all over the country, from Canada to the Gulf and from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And it measures physiological stress. And we would ask people before we did the test, are you stressed? And 50% of those people would say, no, I'm not stressed. Of those 50%, we would hook them up to the heart rate variability study, and 90% of those people would be in physiological stress. They would be out of balance, sympathetic, parasympathetic. So you may not even know it until your barrel overflows. And this goes way back beyond Doris Rapp. I'm sure you've all heard the saying, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. And that saying's got to be older than the hills. I heard it when I was a little boy. And that's the concept that we're talking about. Your barrel fills up and then it overflows, and that's when you start breaking. So you may have a huge amount of stress in your life, but the barrel hasn't overflowed yet. They haven't dropped that one last straw in your back, and you haven't broken as a result of it. But that doesn't mean that you're not in physiological stress. Again, 90% of all people that would tell us that they were not in stress were in physiological stress. And trust me, you have physiological stress today sitting there listening to this message. Hopefully not because of me, but that's just the way we are, and that's called life. You are in physiological stress. So we talked about heart rate variability. What is that? Well, that is a medical test that is designed to test stress, physiological stress in the human body. And it is the perfect test because it only measures what we want it to measure, stress, and number two, there's no placebo effect. So this is like the dream of test when you're talking about the scientific community. It just doesn't get any better. It measures what you want it to, and it doesn't measure what you don't want it to. And this is so important. We wanted to let you see what this looks like because we recently took a heart rate variability test of a gentleman on camera, and we're going to show you that right now. Well, John, welcome. We're going to demonstrate a heart rate variability test. We've mentioned it to you, and heart rate variability is a wonderful test. It's great for several reasons. Number one, it measures stress in the body. We say, okay, we want a test to measure stress, and it does that very well. It reflects the autonomic nervous system and the difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, which is the measure of stress in the body. So it does that very well. And then there's another key component, and that is it's not subject to placebo. So it's not like you have to run 1,000 tests with and 1,000 tests without to get the 2 or 3% difference that occurs with placebo, because heart rate variability is virtually non-subject to placebo. Heart rate variability, very simply, is the heart, when you inhale and exhale, varies a little bit in its rate. It speeds up a little bit when you inhale, and it decelerates or slows down when you exhale a little bit. It happens that reflects the condition of the autonomic nervous system, and is a great predictor, for instance, of outcome in intensive care units. If you don't have any heart rate variability or much variability, your chances aren't near as good of coming out of the intensive care unit. We use it in neonatal units to predict outcomes and how well the child is doing, because it reflects reserve in the autonomic nervous system, and without that reserve, we don't heal well, we don't live well, we don't do well. So it is a reflector of stress, physiological stress in the human body. And we have a great program to measure that, and we're going to do that with John. He's had a real stressful day, so we're going to take and do a heart rate variability test on him, and then we're going to do a healing code on him, and then we're going to repeat the heart rate variability so that you can see visually what happens and the effect of the healing code on the physiology. John, have you ever tried the healing codes personally?
Never have. No, this is brand new, and so I'm in for a new experience.
Have you got any stress in your life?
I'm afraid I do. You know, those lists of, if you're under audit or you're going through, these different things. I've got quite a few of those little...
The list gets longer by the day,
yeah,
huh?
It sure does.
Would you like to have a little less stress in your life?
I would, definitely.
Well, let's do it.
Give me a pill or give me anything. I'll take it.
Well, it's easier than that, and there's no side effects.
Okay.
Okay. Can you just, we don't have to know. Put that on your ear lobe, actually. John, you can just sit back and relax, and this is going to take about 5 minutes. And as you can see, it's checking your pulse and your respiration, and it will measure those against each other and the variability of the heart rate as you inhale and exhale. And that will give us a reflection of the state of stress in your autonomic nervous system.
To get a good test.
Okay. This is the sweet spot, if you would, here.
Just get as relaxed as you can. Think about that problem that's really bothering you. Let's see if we can eliminate it emotionally. Think about the emotional feeling that's bothering you. Is that good?
That type of... Now we've got John's results here as pre and post test, and what we did was we did a pre-test heart rate variability, and then we did a healing code on him, had John do it, and that took about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we actually had him think about what was stressing him, and actually tried to cause that to flare up and stir that back up in him, and then we retested. And here you can see the results. The pre-test, the center being the sweet spot or imbalance, if you would, and John was here in his pre-test, and then after doing the healing codes, he had moved into the sweet spot of balance of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, physiologically showing and proving that we removed physiological stress from his body. Before, in all of history, in all of medical history, what we have just shown here was thought to be virtually impossible. You could take a client, a patient, and move them out of balance to imbalance in a matter of months, or if you really worked at it, in a period of weeks, by really working emotionally and physically and doing workouts and trying intentionally to get heart rate variability steady. And that was a real process. There are some techniques that you can do that can move you from out of balance to imbalance temporarily. But what we've shown with the healing codes is that this begins to be more permanent. Tomorrow we could check John and he would still be in balance. And then if he began to do the healing codes on a regular basis, this would move to imbalance and it would simply stay there, which is where we want to be physiologically, because that's what allows our body to do what it was designed to do. When you take stress off of the immune system, off of the physiology of the body, then it can be all that it's supposed to be. It can heal itself. It can stay in growth and healing mode instead of in self-protect mode.
You know, of course, I don't understand, having this been my first understanding of this, I'm not sure how it all works, but it was very interesting.
Well, it's not mystical. It's just using 4 centers on your body and inputting energy through those in a coded sequence, and it balances the autonomic nervous system. Do you want me to tell you how it does that?
Yeah, I'd be very interested.
Well, I would too. Actually, the answer to that is we don't know.
Oh, okay. That's the mystery.
That is the mystery. That there is something mystical about this. We don't know exactly how it works, except that in those coded sequences, it does remove physiological stress from the body, and we can prove it with heart rate variability studies consistently. So we didn't have to do this 5 or 10 times to show you getting in balance one time, right?
Exactly.
So, and that's the way it works virtually every time. Consistently, we can move people from out of balance to in balance literally in a matter of minutes. And it's consistent. It works every time on everyone. And you know, almost no other technique or approaches uses heart rate variability or any kind of hard science to show you what they're doing. And there's a reason for that. It's because they aren't moving you from out of balance to in balance, and they can't keep you there. Literally, this is the first time in history that this has occurred where we can prove scientifically that we are removing stress physiologically from the human body and changing the stress paradigm. And there you see the results of the heart rate variability study. We can move someone's physiology literally from out of balance to in balance. This took about 7 minutes or less, and that's how long it takes with the healing codes to change your physiology, to move you from out of balance to in balance physiologically. And if you can understand how significant that is, removing physiological stress from the body, you've come a long way to gaining understanding as to how important this is. You're going to take the stress out of the barrel and lower your stress level to where you can deal with life again, and where your body can deal with life, to where you can be in health and in healing and dealing with interpersonal relationships and dealing with success, dealing with all of the issues of your life, because your stress level is going to change. Even though you may not feel like stress is the biggest problem in your life, I promise you it is.